Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome along to your Wednesday cook along on Destination Uri. I'm Aine Boyle from Good Food Nutrition, and today, based on the weather outside, because it's a little bit wet and gloomy, I thought you might all enjoy a little bit of baking. So we had originally planned today for my lovely Moroccan chicken casserole. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that on Friday, so that can be your Friday night meal or your weekend meal. And today, instead, a slight switch around in that I thought people might enjoy getting into the kitchen, baking a bit of bread as well. So what we're going to be doing today is I'm going to be making my lovely, very, very quick wholemeal soda bread. So I don't think there's anybody who doesn't like freshly baked soda bread out of the oven warm. You can put lashings of butter on it, pestos, hummus, whatever you like onto it. But that smell in the house when the oven's on and the bread is baking, oh, there's nothing beats it. So I'm going to show you today how to make the wholemeal soda bread. But as with me always is, I like to have a little twist on my dishes. So I'm going to show you how to make the basic recipe. And then what I'm also going to do today is to give it a little bit of a twist and to flavour it. So the recipe that I have today, and it'll be up on your screen shortly, is it's going to make you 2 small loaves. And the reason I like them at this is that it means that your bread is always fresh. If you make it, it's quite a big loaf if you make it in one go, and it means then it kind of loses that freshness after a day or so. So this one makes sort of 2 smaller loaves, so you can pop one straight into the freezer and you can eat the other and then pull it out of the freezer with a couple of hours to use it. So our ingredients today, really, really simple, I have to say, is you just go with the old traditional soda recipes. They've lasted for a long, long time, and why mess around with them? So I'm going to be using some medium wholemeal flour. Again, sometimes I go medium wholemeal and sometimes I go coarse. I find the coarse wholemeal is very much sort of like the Northern Ireland wheaten, whereas the medium wholemeal is more based around sort of the South soda bread, so kind of brown soda bread. So they are slightly different in texture as well, but I tend to veer more towards the soda bread. So that is the medium wholemeal. And we're also going in with some plain white flour. So at this point, there's a massive ration on with anything baking. You can't get yeast, very hard to get flour. Whatever you can get your hands on. If you can't get the wholemeal flour, what you can do is substitute and just use all white plain flour. Now, obviously that's not going to give you a wholemeal loaf, but what it is going to give you a white soda bread. So if you want the white soda bread, go with that, but the wholemeal loaf is lovely, tastes great. We're also in traditional form with our bicarbonate of soda, so using 1 teaspoon of that, and then your buttermilk as well. So I have a pint of buttermilk. What you will see as well is that I don't necessarily use the whole pint, and I'll explain that in a second. And then my lovely little twists is I am going to be splitting the dough in 2, so the 2 loaves. I'm going to do 1 loaf, I'm going to flavour it up with some delicious sun-dried tomatoes. So if I show you here, guys, these are the beautiful little sun-dried tomatoes you get from the jar. And what I do is I take a few of them, there's about 6 in there. I pop them in like a fine sieve and pour boiling water over them and let them drain off. And what that does is that gets rid of all that oil that they're preserved in, and it means then all that oil isn't going into your bread as well. So it's just a little tip there for you. So we're going to be doing sun-dried tomato and oregano, just dried oregano in one of them. Absolutely fabulous combination as well. See, with lovely fresh soup or salads or something like that, beautiful. And then the other one, simply because I absolutely love them, is we're going to be going in with our black olives. So you can see there, I've probably got maybe about 10 black olives. And we're also going to be going in just with some normal feta cheese. So that's just your packets of feta you get in the supermarkets. And you probably need maybe about 40 grams of it. And what we're going to do is we're going to break it into bits, but we're not going to sort of crumble it down into nothing. So I'll show you that as we go along as well. And then, oh yes, we're also going to be adding, here I forgot, is a little pinch of our sea salt as well. So again, don't forget as well to flavour up your breads as well with your sea salt as well. Gives it a lovely little flavour. So we're going to get going on those, and we're just going to start weighing everything out. So just move a few bits and bobs around. Now get on your weigh-in scales, and we're going to be going in with 200 grams of our plain white flour. The plain flour seems to be easy enough to still get, plain and self-raising. I think it's more sort of if you're looking for the wholemeal flours or the strong bread flours or any of the other flours, they seem to be more tricky. So hopefully you can get your hands on them. So we've got 200 grams of our plain white flour. And just get that as close as you can on the scales. Perfect. And then we're going to put your scales back to naught again, and then we're going to go in with 400 grams of our wholemeal flour. Just try and get that as close as you can to 400. And nearly there. Perfect, great. So just put that to one side. And what I'm just going to do then with this as well, I'm going to whisk it sort of together as well, and that just helps combine it all. Now, into this, a little pinch of our sea salt. So maybe about a quarter of a teaspoon, just to give it that little flavour. And then into that as well is 1 round teaspoon of your bicarbonate. So your bicarbonate, A, is going to help rise bread, but secondly, it gives it that kind of bitter taste or sour taste as well that soda bread is renowned for. So we're going to go in with 1 round teaspoon. Just straight in there. And then we're just going to give everything, turn off your scales there for a second, just going to give everything a good mix around as well. Now, obviously you can go straight in as well here, but I find is, because you're trying to ensure that the bicarbonate is all the way through it, is I find a whisk is just much easier in it as well. And also to make sure the salt is combined the whole way through as well. So just giving everything a really good mix there. And then what I'm going to do is at this point is I'm going to split the mixture. And I'll explain that more now in a second. So I think that should be well combined. And that's why you need, if you are going to split the mixture to make 2 different versions of the bread, is that it's really important that everything at this stage is mixed throughout it. So I would kind of encourage you to maybe whisk it just to make sure that the bicarbonate and the salt is all the way through it. And perfect. Now, what I'm going to do is I have a second bowl, just another second big bowl, and I'm just going to measure out half of that mixture into this bowl. So I'm just going to get myself a big spoon. Okay, so we had 200 grams of plain flour and 400 grams of our wholemeal flour. And the bicarbonate and soda really is minimal. So we're going to then split it into 300 grams basically. So we're just going to take 300 grams from this bowl and pop it into this bowl. So I'm getting myself confused here. Okay, so we have our bowl on there to naught, and then we're just going to weigh it out to get 300 grams in there. And I find this is a great way of sort of making sure that you kind of have different flavors as well in the bread. So you might be using, you know, one of the breads with a particular soup. So for example, if you were doing a lovely tomato and basil soup as well, is that your sun-dried tomato and oregano would go fabulously with it. So again, if you were doing a vegetable soup, maybe a plain soda bread as well. So again, just think about what you want to serve it with. So that's done exactly, the 2 of them even. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to leave them to one side there for a second. And I'm just going to decide, and I'm just going to chop up my sort of flavourings as well. So we'll put our feta there and our olives there. And we're just going to take, as I say, about 6 of our sun-dried tomatoes and give them a little chop down. So again, these are really, really well drained as well, because as I say, I don't want that oil getting into the bread, because again, it's going to give it a bit of a flavour, but it's going to make it quite claggy as well. So again, we're just going to chop these as finely as we can, using a good sharp knife, and they're basically oil-free at this stage. So I can feel it even on them, they're completely drained. And then with the last 2, just give it all a good chop through. And that should be it. So we're going to just pop that straight into the first bowl. every little bit of that. And then what we're going to do is, with the second bowl, is while we're at it, we're going to chop our olives and we're going to sort of crumble in our feta as well. So, well, actually, before we go into that, is for the sun-dried tomatoes, I'll actually add in the oregano at the moment. So we're going to go in with about 1 teaspoon of our oregano. I like quite a lot of it because it's such a delicious flavour. So I'll add that in. That's half and 1 teaspoon. And I'll give that a good mix around now in a minute once we have the second lot in. So for our second variety of bread, we're going to go in with, as I say, about 10 black olives. And again, these are just rinsed off. You get these in the jars you get in the supermarket, and just run them in a colander with a bit of cold water over them and let them drain off as well, because you don't want any of that brine that's in the jar to get into the bread as well. So just be careful you don't have those additional flavours in. So again, just giving that everything a good little chop down, slicing down. If you want to save yourself time, you can actually buy the jars of sliced olives. There is nothing wrong with that. And they are actually really handy for just sprinkling over salads and stuff as well. So I won't judge you if you're just going to go with those ones instead. So again, just giving everything a good mix around and a good little chop up. That's great. They're good to go. So in we're going to go to our second mix. Just give my hands a bit of a wipe there. And then as well as that, we are going to add in our crumbled feta. Now, when I'm talking about crumbling it, you'll see sort of the big chunks I have there is, I am just going to, I'll show you here in front of you, I am just going to sort of break off bits. Okay, I don't want it into tiny, I don't want it like grated cheese. I'm just going to sort of break it into bits just with my fingers. Because the good thing about feta is when you actually cook what it is, it holds its shape. So it doesn't melt down the way that, say, grated or cheddar would or mozzarella or anything like that is. It does. So when you cut through it, it still kind of keeps its shape. So again, just crumbling it all through. And that looks great. Now, I'm just going to give my hands a very quick wash just because they're very sticky from the feta. Okay. Now, what we're going to do now is we're just going to give everything a I'll just get rid of this as well. I'm going to give everything a really good mix around. And you can see here in this one here, as I say, this one, the black olive and the feta. And again, with your hands, is just give everything a mix around. Now, the reason I do this before I'm adding in the milk is that if I add the milk straight in, everything's going to gloop together. So what's going to happen is, rather than the olives being the olives and the feta being spread throughout the whole bread, is that the milk's going to make everything sort of stick together and you're going to end up with everything in one big clump. So whenever you're adding in flavourings like this, is pop them in and just sort of rub the mixture through your fingers. And in effect is the flour that's actually coating those flavourings, stopping them from sticking together in the bread. So it is just a little trick there to make sure that when somebody cuts into the bread, you don't end up with a big wodge of olives and feta as well. So again, just mix it around. And you can see there is sort of everything, it's just nicely sort of blended together. And we're going to do the same over here for the sun-dried tomatoes. So you can see there, the sun-dried tomatoes on top. Now the sun-dried tomatoes particularly do this where you're mixing it all into the flour, because remember, they have come from oil and they have been sort of drenched with boiling water as well. And even though I let them sort of drain off until they're more or less dried, they're not. And if you don't do this, there is a very big likelihood that they will clump together. And it means then that that lovely flavouring won't be spread throughout the bread, and it'll probably only be in 1/4 of it as well. So again, just mixing it all through your fingers. It's as if you're kind of rubbing in the butter mixture into flour to make sort of like scones or something like that. So that should be well mixed through. Okay. Now just get rid of a few bits and bobs there for myself. Right, now at this point this is where you need to be very careful when you're adding in the milk. Okay, so we'll start off here with the black olive and feta one. And when I have in your recipe a pint of buttermilk, I have found really that for this whole mixture, you're probably, depending on the flours, and as I said in other recipes and other videos as well, is depending on which flour you use or which brand of flour you use, they all do take different amounts of liquid to actually bring them together. It's very, very different. So don't just, when you see a recipe with asking for a pint of buttermilk, always go in with about 3/4 of it and then judge it on the rest. So mine says a pint, but I would recommend probably no more than about 500 mils, maybe about 520. So on this one, we're going to say 500 mils overall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add about 200 to 250 mils into this one first and see where we're at, and then do the same for this one before I turn them out onto the table. Now, in true old style is I was taught to make soda bread growing up as well. So we always used to make it is with just with a knife, a normal, just a normal knife that you use for your dinner. And the idea is that the buttermilk goes in and you're just bringing it together very gently. It's not a bread that you need and put a load of elbow grease into it, because you don't want that. That will end up making it a very tough loaf and make the dough very tough and very chewy. And while you want the outside crust to be chewy, you want the inside to be really, really soft and fresh as well. So set your scales back to naught and just get them onto your milliliters. And then we're going to go in, as I say, I might go in, it's going to be 250 overall, 250 milliliters overall. So I'll look at maybe going in with about 220. Oh, before you do that, actually, it's not necessary. But what I tend to do is using your hand is just to create a little well in the middle there. And what you're doing is you're going to pour in the buttermilk straight in there. So about 220 to start. And yeah, that's about 220. So what I'm going to do is, again, with my knife, is just very gently, I will show you here, is just, you can see there, you're nearly doing the figure of 8 with the knife, but you are drawing the whole mixture together. And you're not going in then with the heat of your hands as well. So you really are just barely bringing the mix together. And you know sort of when it has too much, well, hopefully you haven't put in too much buttermilk, because then it's quite hard to kind of rectify the recipe. But you know if it needs more, in that it's still quite sort of raggedy looking and dry looking. So again, just get all the flour from the sides of the bowl and check with your hands then once you've done that, because it should feel kind of wettish without actually being overly soggy. So that's perfect, that is, that doesn't need any more milk in there at all. So we're going to leave that to one side for a second, and I'm going to now add the milk for my sun-dried tomato and oregano loaf. Okay, so back to naught. And again, with your hand, it's just creating that sort of well in the middle, and then go in with about 220 milliliters. And this is where I suppose you have to be really careful, because if you add in too much, you can throw in a bit of extra flour, but you then upset the recipe as well. It might not turn out a disaster, but just easier to kind of go in with less to start. So again, just mixing with the knife, mixing everything around. I'll show you there. Just drawing it together. And you can already see it all starting to come together. And again, just pull all the flour from the edges of the bowl as well. And very quickly, it does start to come together. So this is the point then where, again, is just test it with your hand and just see if you can sort of pull it together like that. And it is perfect. You don't want any more in there, as I say, as otherwise is too much buttermilk. It's going to be very, very soggy loaf. So I'm just going to get rid of my weighing scales now, and we're going to turn out the bread onto the tabletop and just shape it together. So we get ourselves a little bit more of our plain flour. And we're just going to give a little sprinkle onto our tabletop. And then a little sprinkle onto your hands as well. It makes it a lot easier to actually work with. Now, I tend to have a few tools in the kitchen when it comes to making bread. Makes it a little bit easier to kind of scrape out the bowl. This is just little plastic scrapers you get. They're just a little baker's tool. And I use those for literally just scraping around, you'll see there, and getting all the lovely bits of dough off the side of the bowl. So we're just going to bring that together. It's also a good way of kind of, you'll see here, nearly kneading in the bowl and bringing it together really cleanly. And then we're just going to turn that out onto our tabletop. And then the effect of that is that you get nearly every single bit of dough out of the bowl and it's not all half stuck up the sides. Now, a little bit of our plain flour just on the top. You only want a little bit, not too much. And then as soft as you can, imagine you're handling nearly a baby, is just a little bit of flour in your hands, and then you are literally just rolling it into a nice round, smooth shape. So you're not kneading it, because as I say, that's going to pull it apart. You're not going to be working with the gluten in this flour, you're just sort of pulling it together until it has come together in a round circle about that size. Okay, so we're going to put that to one side there, so you barely bring it together. And we're going to just work on the other side now here. And then again, using our scraper, you'll see here, is just using the scraper to gather all those lovely bits from the sort of moist dough. And you're nearly sort of bringing it together in the bowl with the baker's tool. And then out onto the countertop. And then again, with your hands, there's a little bit of flour on them. You can already smell the lovely sun-dried tomatoes from it, just gorgeous. Again, just with your floured hands, is just turning it until you're kind of getting rid of all those cracks in it. And then you've kind of got the smoothness of it. That's what you're doing. You're nearly pulling it over just to put the cracked bits underneath. And then I'll show you there. You can see perfectly smooth. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to I have preheated my my oven to 220. Sorry, I forgot to say that in the beginning. Preheat your oven to 220 degrees. And I have put in like a large baking sheet in there as well with a silicone lining on it. And it just means as well is that the bread won't stick to the tin. If you're not using a silicone lining or any sort of lining, a little sprinkle of your flour, and that should mean it doesn't stick to it. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to get that out of the oven. And we're just going to pop our bread onto it. So this tray is lovely and hot at this point, and the good thing about that is that it's actually going to start cooking the minute that the bread goes onto it. So you're not sort of putting it onto a cold tray where it then has to come up to heat. So what I'm going to do is, before I even push them down, is I'm just going to pop them straight on as is. And then with my cutter I'm just going to do the traditional, if anybody remembers who used to make soda bread from years ago, they used to do a traditional sort of cross across the top. But what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to very gently, and I mean really gently, is just push down with my hand. Do not push them down too much, because otherwise as your bread when it comes out is going to be flattened. So it's not going to rise that much. And then what I'm going to do is with my cutter is just across them, is just do the traditional cross there, and again right across the other one. So then I'm going to bake those in the oven now. I'm going to pop them into the oven, and what you're going to do is you're going to bake them for the first 15 minutes at 220 degrees. Then set your timer for it, because if you're anything like me, you go away and you forget things cooking. So set your timer 15 minutes at 220 degrees, and then after that, turn your oven down to 200 degrees for another 10 minutes. So I'm just going to pop them in. We'll set the oven. So that is 15 minutes. And the reason that we cook it on the high temperature to begin with is just to get that beautiful outer crispiness in it as well. and it gives that kind of crust to it. But it means then is that when we turn the oven down after 15 minutes is we make sure the inside is cooking well and it's not really doughy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to recap on that very quickly, and then I'm going to show you the cooked ones as well. I have one that I cooked earlier, so I'm going to show you that one instead. But the ingredients for that one, we had 400 grams of our wholemeal flour, either coarse or medium. We had 200 grams of plain flour, one rounded teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda, and a quarter teaspoon of sea salt, and then approximately about 500 to 550 milliliters of buttermilk. Now, a little tip for you, if you can't get your hands on buttermilk, it's actually not too bad at the moment, there's plenty of it there, is if you can't get your hands on it, take normal full-fat buttermilk, squeeze the juice of half to one full lemon into it, put it aside for about 15 minutes, and it's not exactly the same as buttermilk, but it will do the job for you as well, okay? And you still get that sourness, which is sort of synonymous with your soda breads as well. So the flavorings that I put in today was, what I did is the whole mixture, the flours, the salt, the bicarbonate, not the buttermilk, I weighed that out, and then I split that mix into two. And I flavoured one with chopped sun-dried tomatoes and oregano for that kind of Italian bread, which, as I said, goes absolutely beautiful with a lovely tomato and basil soup, gorgeous. And then the second one, for a little bit sort of a Greek feel, I went with chopped black olives and feta cheese. And then I just mixed the individual, I split the flour mixture between two, and I had just then added the individual flavourings into each one, mix them around really, really well to make sure they're well combined with your hands. Remember, we wanted the flour to kind of cling to all the bits of the flavourings. And then we wanted to go in and add in our buttermilk. So what I was very careful at that point, get your bowls back onto your weighing scale, and for each bread, remember you're getting 2 loaves out of that recipe I have, for each one, you're going to be adding in about 220 millilitres of buttermilk. Now you may find it'll take up to about maybe 250 millilitres, but what I found today is that 220 was loads, and that, as I said, that totally depends on which flour you use, what brand of flour you use, as they all kind of take different levels of moisture. We then mix them together with the buttermilk. We turn them out onto your flour top, and we shape them into just small little rounds. And then we bake them to begin with for 15 minutes at 220 degrees, and then we turn down the oven to 200 degrees for a further 10 minutes. You may find at the end is that the bottom of the bread maybe feels slightly softer. If you do, is just flip it over onto its top, and you can always bake it for another 5 minutes if you like, but I tend to find 25 minutes does it great. And then what I did, obviously, because I don't think you want to stand or sit and listen to me for 25 minutes more while the bread's cooking, is I baked one earlier, just to show you sort of what they come out like. So you can see here, is they come out about a lovely sort of small size there, not too thick. But I find that they are plenty big, because it means, as I say, is that, you know, soda bread's much nicer on the first day, and you can toast it the second day. But is that you have a lovely fresh loaf on day one, pop the other one into the freezer, and then you can take that out whenever you need as well. So you can see there, as I say, is after all that, my lovely wholemeal soda bread, and with your own flavourings as well. So hopefully that all made sense as well. It seemed like a very convoluted way to make soda bread. If you're just making it the plain way, then all you're doing is putting everything together, mixing, and then just into the oven. What I do find is that it is a very nice basic recipe, and it does taste absolutely lovely with the additional flavours. You can put in whatever you like. If you have fresh rosemary from the garden, chop that and put it in as well. It's really, really nice. If you know you're going to be eating the bread sort of today for lunch or whatever, leftover ham in there as well, really finely chopped as well with herbs. It's absolutely lovely, because you know you're going to be having it on the day, so it's not going to be sitting in the bread bin as well. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, or if you have any questions whatsoever, is pop it in the comments box underneath the video. And And if you do enjoy that, or you're looking for more recipes, I will stick up the link to my Fabulous Foodies Facebook group, and you can always check that out as well. There's always lots of recipes each day. There's also videos in there to follow as well. And what I'll do is, for this Friday, is I definitely will be doing my Moroccan chicken casserole. It's absolutely lovely. It's packed full of lovely Moroccan spices, tomatoes, garlic. I'm adding in some lovely chickpeas there, and you can serve it with rice. You can serve it with some of your lovely crusty bread as well. So there's loads you can do. So hope you enjoyed that today. Join me again on Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock when I'm making my Moroccan chicken. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great day.